of our Only the Young series. So there are some things that once you're older, you realize are only for the young, like drinking multiple energy drinks or staying up all night. Enjoy it all because trust me, one day you will wake up and your entire body is sore because you played 1 or 2 rounds of Just Dance the day before. It's only downhill from there. I'm kidding. But seriously, make the most of this amazing time in your life because there are some things that you can only do while you're young. You know this. That's why you can get away with staying up so late even though you have to be up so early, or hanging out with friends when you're supposed to be studying, or eating 10 bags of Takis and washing them down with 4 Red Bulls, the classic high schooler's breakfast. Listening to music and going to concerts and screaming our lungs out so we can't even hear the person that's singing. Maybe that was just me, I don't know. Or like sending ridiculous memes to each other. Dressing up for spirit days, those are always my favorite. Finding time for small adventures like meeting up and watching the sunset with friends. The point is, we all know there will be a time when life is not like this. Our friends won't necessarily live nearby and our stepmom won't be buying the groceries. So for now, let's make the most of the days being young. But isn't it true that we also use this same logic to do some stuff that we know we probably shouldn't do? All right, you all know what a roundabout is, right? Those circular intersections with like 4 exits. They're a bit confusing the first time you drive through one, but it gets easier. So, back in high school, I was the driver of my friend group, meaning I was pretty much 100% responsible for their safety and well-being while on the road. Which is exactly why I would just take laps through the roundabout. I would only do like 1 or 2 before actually continuing the drive. And I was always lucky enough that there were never any incoming cars while I did them. But it's still a risk that I shouldn't have taken. I could have hit another car or swerved into something that hurt my friends and myself. Looking back, that was pretty dangerous of me, but back then I felt young and invincible. No matter how many times my parents warned me not to be a reckless driver, I just thought, oh well, I'm only young once. YOLO, right? Now, come on, I can't be the only person in history who has thought that, right? Haven't we all been there? Maybe we aren't taking laps on roundabouts, but we say things like, well, I'm only young once, and then we make our friends laugh by making fun of other people, or get lazy, or just get distracted and skip studying. Or we overload our bodies with caffeine and a lack of sleep. Or we get drunk or high at a party. Gossip about other people. Hook up with someone impulsively. Send pictures that we know could hurt other people or hurt our own reputation. But listen, none of this is to put shame on you. If you've done any of this, trust me, you are not the only one who has. I'm just saying that sometimes being young feels like a good excuse to experiment. Being young is like getting a pass to do whatever you want in the name of living and learning. I mean, honestly, when we're testing out a bit of trouble, we can, at least for the moment, feel pretty powerful, right? Besides, you're only young once. But what if there's more power in being young than testing boundaries? Last week, we started this series by talking about a couple of guys who lived a long time ago. Their names are Paul and Timothy. Even though they lived a long time ago, you actually have something in common with Timothy. He was young too. By the standards of the day, Timothy was young when Paul, who was one of the most influential Christian leaders to ever live, invited him to lead other people. See, Paul used to travel around and tell people about how Jesus died and came back to life. For a while, Timothy went on these trips with Paul. As they traveled, Paul mentored Timothy as a follower of Jesus and leader until one day, in a town called Ephesus, Paul put Timothy in charge of an entire church. So this meant that many people, both younger and older than Timothy, would be looking up to him for leadership. As Timothy led, Paul would write him letters to encourage him and help him know how to lead well. Those letters are now called 1st and 2nd Timothy and are a part of the Bible. Thankfully, you and I can read them and learn so much about what being young can be like for followers of Jesus. Check out this one statement Paul makes that is the big idea that our entire series is focused on. He wrote, 1 Timothy 4 verse 12, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Paul understood that Timothy wasn't a leader for later. He wasn't in a someday when you grow up, God will use you situation. No, God had something incredible and important for Timothy to do right then, while he was still young. That's why he was adamant that Timothy shouldn't let anyone else look down on him or set a low bar for him. Instead, he was supposed to set a positive example for other people. In order to help him do this, Paul wrote some advice a little bit later in his letter that proves to be helpful for us today. Paul wraps up his first letter to Timothy, reminding him of the huge responsibility he has. 1 Timothy 6 verse 20. "Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge." So there's been some debate about what exactly Paul was referring to when he says what has been entrusted to your care. But essentially he's saying, hey Tim, make sure that you represent the message of Jesus well to the people and the community around you. Make sure that the way you live, the way you lead, and the way you conduct your personal life when no one is watching lines up with what you believe. Make sure that you keep people focused on what Jesus said was true about life, about God, and about what he says is best. Timothy had a huge responsibility, and Paul wanted to make sure he understood the significance of what he was doing. At the same time, he also wanted him to turn away from the things that could distract him from what was best. Things like godless chatter or things that people called knowledge that are really just a waste of time. Just like there are so many arguments and opinions about what is best, what is true, and what we should do with our lives today, there were the same challenges 2,000 years ago. There were all sorts of ideas of what the best life was supposed to look like, and Paul was simply telling Timothy to focus on what he knew to be true by following the ways and teachings of Jesus. In other words, Paul was saying, I want more for you than what's common, Timothy. It wouldn't make you a bad person if you did whatever you wanted to with your years of being young, but I believe God has something powerful for you to do right now. And what God has for you is too important for you to get distracted. Here's the thing, the same is true for you. Maybe you've never thought about it this way, but God has a purpose for your time in high school. God isn't waiting for graduation or your marriage or your career to use you to impact the people around you. God has work for you to do now. In fact, the work that God has for you in middle school or in high school, you can only do while you're young. You are only young once, which means that these years of middle school and high school are years that you'll never get back. I highly doubt God would just want you to wander through these years without experiencing anything significant or without helping other people in significant ways. You have an amazing opportunity to change the course of the lives of people around you by serving them and encouraging them. If we're paying attention to Paul's advice, I think this mission is too important to get distracted by gossip, laziness, treating others poorly, wasting time, or living irresponsibly. However, this doesn't mean you're not supposed to have fun at all. Not at all. I mean, do you see who's giving you this message? Hello? But it does mean that while you're having fun, it's also important that you remember that there are some things that you can only accomplish while you're young. You don't want to miss out on what God can do in and through you in your high school years. You get to decide what your years of being young will be about. Take a look at this video to help you understand a little bit more about how this all works. High schoolers, this video is specifically geared for you.
The last time I Googled this, and you know I Googled it because nobody has time to do this math, I learned that you have about 209 weeks of life throughout your 4 years of high school. And in this jar are about 209 marbles. Each marble represents a week of the 4 years that you have in high school. That's 209 weeks that you get to choose how you will use. So think about it. I mean, TikTok's a really big deal right now, so maybe you want to use some of your weeks for that. I don't know, maybe that's too many. Who knows? It's up to you to choose. Or maybe it's just hanging out with your friends. I mean, friends are a big deal. They should be. They should be a big deal for the rest of your life. So maybe you spend quite a bit of time there. Maybe it's at work because you have to have a job. A job is a really big deal. Maybe it's to you, or maybe it is to your parents or step-parents, but you have to have a job. Oh, that one almost got away, but we'll put it in there, all right? Or maybe it's practice, because you have that coach. They're a great person and all of that, but they work you very hard. So it seems like you spend most of your week at practice. Look, here's the deal. No matter how you choose to use your time, these 4 years are ones that you will never get back. And the important thing to remember is that you are the one who gets to choose. You get to choose which jars you fill up in life, what you do with these marbles, or what you do with the weeks of your lives. Now, it might not feel like it all the time, especially when your coach or your boss is telling you what to do, but ultimately, the story of these 4 years of your life will come down to how you spent the majority of your time. I mean, maybe you'd rather spend more time investing in your financial future. If there was a jar up here for that, you'd fill that one with a lot of marbles, so you choose to work more often. Or maybe your friendships really do matter a lot to you, so a lot of your time goes to hanging out. That would be another jar. There are so many different jars that we could put up here representing the things that we can choose to do with our time. I mean, maybe you want to build a habit of serving other people. So volunteering would be a jar, and it would be full of marbles because you would give a significant amount of your time there. Honestly, there's so many good things that you can invest your time in. Now, of course, we can also easily spend our time on things that might not matter as much, but the beautiful thing is you get to choose. So what do you really want? Because you get to decide what your years of being young will be about.
So, will your years be about making an impact or something else? Will they be about taking your potential to make a difference seriously, or about the distractions that can get so easily in our way? You have more power than you might think. You're only young once, so really make it count. By now, you know that these years can be really special. That is only part of what we're talking about today. If you're really going to experience all that God has for you in middle school or high school, then it's important that you take Paul's advice seriously and put his words into action. This week, you can start living the life that is uniquely yours while you're young. Even if you're not sure about all this Jesus stuff, I would guess that you want to get the most out of life. My guess is that you want your younger years to be some great years. So whether you're still figuring out how you feel about all this church stuff, or if you've been a Christian for a while, here are a couple of steps you can take to head in this direction. 1. Ask God, what do you have for me? Spend some time thinking, praying, and maybe even journaling about what God might do through you in your teenage years. How might God use you to impact your friends, your family, your teachers, older people, younger people, and your community? What gift has God given you? What influence do you already have? Where has God placed you? Think about all of these things and ask God to show you how He might want to use you to make an impact over these special years. If you're not sure where to begin with this one, talk to your life group leader or another trusted adult. They might be able to see some potential that you're struggling to see yourself. If you're not sure you want to follow Jesus, maybe your first step is talking to a life group leader about the kind of life Jesus offers you. See, Jesus came so that you could have the best kind of life possible as a teenager and forever. What if this is really what God has for you? Would it be worth exploring more? Whether you're new to all of this or have been Christian for a while, take some time this week to ask God, what do you have for me? And then, number 2, evaluate what you're currently up to. You can do this by asking yourself a really simple question. How might my words, actions, habits, or friends be distracting me from what God has for me? I know this is tough, but it's so important. Be honest with yourself. If you're having a hard time with that, ask your life group leader or a trusted friend to be honest with you. Just know that no matter how hard it may be to be honest about where you're at, what God has in store for you is so worth it. This isn't about you feeling shame or never having fun or suddenly dropping everyone from your life. But this is about you evaluating your reality of your current teenage experience so that you can begin to have the best teenage experience possible, or even better, the best life possible. So evaluate what you're currently up to, then begin to head in the direction of what God has for you. When you decide to take these steps, you'll be deciding that you want your years of being young to be about all that God has for you. God is not waiting on you to grow up so that you can begin to experience what God has for you. No, God takes you seriously right now. So does every adult who serves in Roots. We believe that your generation is the best generation, and we've already seen God do incredible things in and through you all. We believe that He's just getting started. We believe that you can impact your school, our community, your family, and us in incredible ways. Not just later, but right now. These years of your life can be full of impact. There are some opportunities and challenges that only happen while you're young. So, when you're older, don't forget what this feels like. So, let me ask you this. What do you want your teenage years to be about? Let's pray. Dear God, I just thank you for every person that is watching in this room right now. I just pray that, those in middle school and high school that can just learn to really fully dive into you and be able to make an impact to the people around them and just really be lights to the world. We love you so much, and we are so grateful for everything you've given us. In your name I pray, amen.